The wedding hall was filled with gasps. Guests whispered as tears rolled down Alina's cheeks, her wedding dress soaked in humiliation. Broken bar he left. She whispered in disbelief. The man she loved, her fiancé copyright of 3 years, had vanished just an hour before their vows. Only a note remained. I can't marry you. You deserve someone better. But little did Alina know, this heartbreak would lead her to the most unexpected love story of her life. A marriage that started by accident, a broken bar with a man the world thought was poor, but was far from ordinary. Story begins. Alina had always believed in fairy tales. She dreamed of love, loyalty, and a future built on trust. Her engagement to Armin was supposed to be the perfect example of that dream. He was charming, successful, and from a respected family. But behind his polished smile, he hid secrets Alina was too blinded by love to see. The morning of their wedding, Alina stood before the mirror, glowing with happiness. Her mother adjusted her veil and whispered, "You're the luckiest girl in the world." But fate had other plans. Hours later, Alina found herself humiliated before hundreds of guests, abandoned without explanation. The whispers, the pitying looks they cut deeper than any blade. She ran out of the hall, barefoot and broken, her tears mixing with the rain that began to pour. Sitting on a park bench, still in her wedding gown, she watched the world move on. Cars passing, people laughing while her world had fallen apart. Maybe I was never enough, she whispered, clutching her bouquet. That's when she met him. Ibrahim. He was sitting under a tree nearby, fixing an old bicycle. His clothes were simple, his hands rough from labor, but his eyes were kind. When he saw her crying, he walked over slowly. "Miss a broken bar, are you okay?" he asked softly. Alina looked up, her mascara running down her face. "Do I look okay?" she snapped before bursting into tears again. Instead of leaving, Ibrahim sat beside her silently, letting her cry. Minutes later, he offered his handkerchief. "You shouldn't cry for someone who doesn't know your worth." His words were simple, but they struck something deep inside her. For the first time that day, she looked at someone not with anger, but curiosity. "And what would you know about worth?" she asked bitterly. He smiled gently, enough to know that diamonds are often thrown away when people mistake them for stones. The night grew darker, and the rain didn't stop. Alina had nowhere to go. Her relatives were furious about the embarrassment, and her parents refused to answer her calls. Ibrahim noticed her shivering and said, "You can come to my place until the storm stops. Don't worry, I'm not dangerous." Desperate and exhausted, she agreed. His home was tiny, just one room and a leaking roof, yet it felt warmer than any mansion she'd ever visited. He made her tea, gave her a blanket, and slept outside on the floor so she could rest. That night, Alina couldn't sleep. She kept staring at the man who had shown her more kindness in one evening than her fiancé copyright had in years. The next morning, Alina woke up with a decision she couldn't explain. Maybe it was the pain, maybe the loneliness, or maybe fate was pushing her towards something unexpected. She looked at Ibrahim and said quietly, "Will you marry me?" He froze. "What? You don't even know me." "I don't need to," she replied with tears in her eyes. "I just need to start over. I don't want a rich man, I want someone real." Ibrahim studied her face at the pain, the sincerity, and after a long silence, he nodded. "All right, but don't regret it later." They went to a small registrar office that same day. No fancy dresses, no music, no guests, just two broken souls signing a paper to rewrite their destinies. The first few months were hard. Alina struggled to adapt to a life without luxury. She sold her jewelry, cooked her own meals, and even learned to sew to support their small household. Yet, every time she faltered, Ibrahim was there, patient, kind, and always smiling. When she burned dinner, he laughed. When she cried missing her old life, he said, "You'll build a better one." Slowly, Alina began to realize she was healing, not because of money or status, but because of love that expected nothing in return. One day, Ibrahim told her he had to go to the city for some work. He was gone for 3 days. Alina missed him terribly and decided to surprise him by visiting his workplace. But when she arrived, her world stopped. He wasn't working at a repair shop as she thought. He was standing outside a towering glass building with a dozen men in suits bowing to him. "Good morning, "Sir," they greeted as he walked inside. The logo above the building read, "Im Holdings Private Limited." Confused, Alina followed him. She saw his name, Ibrahim Malik, CEO. She froze. The man she thought was a poor mechanic was, in truth, a hidden millionaire. When he returned home that evening, she was waiting, her eyes filled with both shock and hurt. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly. He sighed. "Because I wanted to know if someone could love me without my money. I met you when you were broke in a broken bar and I wanted you to heal without thinking I was saving you with wealth." Tears filled her eyes. "So broken bar all this time, you were testing me?" He smiled softly and held her hands. "No, Alina, I was testing myself to see if I could still believe in love that's pure." At that moment, Alina realized that the pain, the rejection, the heartbreak had all led her exactly where she was meant to be. Not to a rich man, but to a real man. Ending scene. Emotional resolution. A year later, Alina and Ibrahim renewed their vows, at this time in a garden filled with laughter, family, and friends. She wore a simple dress, and he stood proudly beside her. No secrets, no lies. As she looked into his eyes, she whispered, "You were right. Diamonds are often mistaken for stones." He smiled, pulling her close, and sometimes, the most broken hearts create the strongest love stories. The crowd applauded, the music swelled, and Alina smiled through her tears, not because her life was perfect, but because it was finally real.